Welcome back to the Single Malt Review. Time for another little bit of a foray through one particular distillery, courtesy of a gift pack of miniatures.
Yes, indeed. We're going to have a wee look, we in terms of the bottle size, not we in terms of our explosion of information which we're about to deliver, of the Balvenie. The sort of, I suppose you call it the second fiddle to the Leviathan Glenfiddich, and owned by the same people, William Grant and Sons. And so we have sort of their core range here, which makes up the 12-year-old DoubleWood, the 17-year-old DoubleWood, and the 14-year-old Caribbean cask. And I suppose we'll do them in sort of order of age, I guess, would be the most sensible thing to do. So we will start off today with the 12-year-old DoubleWood, which I will briefly explain while you do us a pour.
Right.
I can sort of sit there for it. So, the DoubleWood. It's not particularly clear about how it's made, but I happen to know how they do it. And it's more of a one wood, then another wood, which I suppose still makes sense within the realms of what a DoubleWood might be, but it's a finish rather than a real double maturation. Like most Balvenie whiskey, it is, I'm just going to show a cat here, it is bourbon matured for its the majority of its life, in this case 12 years old, and then it is finished for I think 8 or 9 months in this case I think Oloroso sherry, which is usually a safe bet.
They say
sherry casks? it'll be some sort of sherry. Conceivably a blend of sherry, PX, whatever, and the result is still a fairly balanced whiskey, but really not something that has been, what I like to call anyway, matured in any kind of
the way they described it on the label would imply that it's been given equal treatment in both types of cask.
So, anyway, before we really get too technical here, just a few tidbits on the Balvenie itself. As I said, it's owned by the Glenfiddich people, William Grant and Sons, who are, funny enough, independent, huge a company as they may be, biggest independents out there. And Balvenie is their other distillery. Well, if you count Kinninvie, of course, I'll get into Kinninvie later. That's a much, much smaller distillery than the Leviathan Glenfiddich. Its output is just over 5 million litres. I think it's 5.6 million litres based on Wikipedia's last count anyway. So it's not small, it's not tiny, that's for sure, but it's nothing on the scale of the humongous Glenfiddich distillery. And it has a lot more of a, I guess they'd like you to call it a craft focus. It's a very, very hands-on sort of distillery. It does its own maltings to a small extent. It has a working malting floor. It even grows a little bit of its own barley on, well, maybe not on site, but on a farm that it owns. But the malting really only counts for not more than 20%, I think, of the malt that it needs. So
15 to 20, depending on what source you rely on.
It does a portion of its own malting, but nothing like a Springbank, which does 100% of its own malting. So what difference that actually makes in the whiskey is maybe a little bit diminishing once you take that all into account. The other sort of notable feature there is it has quite a big cooperage. It does the coopering for a lot of Glenfiddich's needs as well, so it maintains, I've heard it said that there's about as many coopers in Scotland as there is distilleries, by and large, around about 120, and that the Balvenie eats up a full 12 of them, so that's quite a ratio there. But as I say, it is quite a big cooperage. They probably help out a few other distilleries from time to time. And yeah, they like to think they're very, very hands-on, employing a lot of different people for a lot of different things, and not being particularly mechanised. Their stills are direct-fired, still I think coal-fired maybe, I'm not 100% sure on that, but they are directly heated, which is quite uncommon. Quite uncommon now throughout Scotland. That's something they do share with Springbank, direct-fired stills. So, though they are perfectly modern in terms of their sort of brand and outlook, they do maintain a few sort of more rustic practices. But whether or not that comes through in the whiskey, we will just have to find out. So, enough about that. Let's have a wee look what's going on in the 12.
43%. Decent common base strength. It does smell lovely though. That's a good nose.
It is. a very deep nose. The though it may only be a finish that Oloroso influence, it's not without its not making itself unknown by any means. There's quite a lot of fairly overt European wood characters here.
There's a lot of honey. There's some tropical fruits, some guava and mango.
There's spice. There's a wee bit of clove and a little bit of cinnamon going on there.
And some dried apricot.
Yeah. Maybe just a little bit more than a little dried apricot.
Yeah.
There's quite a bit of dried fruit on there. There's
quite a bit of honey. It's sort of a baklava.
There's some slightly deeper honey, a bit of bush honey. There's almonds, hazelnuts as well, slightly darker end of the spectrum than your usual just sort of straight up almond. It's a good complex nose to it, pulling from a lot of different areas.
Not hugely bourbon dominant, at least.
No.
Ooh. Oh, that is a very sweet and very fizzy set of flavours there.
It's quite, considering the nose, it's surprisingly prickly. It's not a particularly spiritus flavour, but it's a very, very hot character in the mouth. It's like it has a lot of fire to it, which is interesting.
It's making me think of citrus sherbet and those slightly terrifying American cinnamon candies. You ever had those? Like the artificial cinnamon flavoured drops?
The artificial cinnamon, or at least what's carried in the big red gum, is I think the only thing on earth that I'm allergic to. So I tend to give cinnamon candies a wide berth. So you'll be the expert there. But it certainly has a lot of quite fiery spice there, and cinnamon is certainly part of that experience. As far as other things, there is quite a wood influence there, quite an oaky whiskey. It's quite sweet still, but that's the palate is sort of jutting between these other hot alcohol and these overtly sweet flavours. Makes it a little bit difficult to lock down. What I will do is put a wee bit of water in and see if that calms it down.
But it has done interesting things to the aroma. It's got a very strong nose now of lime, including like a lime syrup or cordial, as well as a lot of blossoms. I'm thinking possibly sort of more subtle floral notes, some citrus flower, some even like daisies or the like.
It does have a floral...
Not a big perfumey hit, but a gentle spring meadow kind of a sensation.
There's almost a little bit of... There's a bit of rose fragrance there. Almost just a wee bit of Turkish delight character coming through, but it's only sort of around the edges. It's still quite woody, quite fruity, not particularly malty. And it smells to me, more in the nose than the palate, that there's something in here which they've used to top dress. It has a character of more mature whiskey that's gone in here, which is almost lost among the very, very keenly fiery 12-year-old that's in here. But there is something a wee bit more subtle, possibly something that might be a bit more evident once we try the 17, because I'll bet it's up around that age, something that they've used.
That's quite a remarkable flavour still. I'm getting... the only thing I really pin it down to, it's sort of like, it's a bit of a sort of stereotypical kind of Turkish cafe afternoon tea. There's tastes of baklava, Turkish delight, and maybe, sakımcıbın, that very strong mint and sugar cordial.
I have had a brush with sakımcıbın now and then, but
all of that is coming through here in interesting ways. It's good. It's a nice, coherent, yet complex set of flavours.
I think I might have just slightly overwatered mine. It's struggling to really come through, but never mind. No need for that. We've got more whiskey to do yet. No, this one I think it is quite pleasing. I'll mention this once up front, so that I don't have to go on about it further in. The coming along with the sort of craft, hands-on, back to basics, rustic presentation which Balvenie brings across, there is a significant price premium that you pay for its whiskey. To compare it with the rest of their company, Glenfiddich, Balvenie is very, very expensive year for year. And it justifies that with its craft presentation. Whether you buy into that or not will, I think, affect your mileage of Balvenie quite significantly. I'll mention that once now and then try to forget so that we can be as objective as possible. when we review this and the other ones. But do be aware of that. These are very, very premium priced whiskies. And whether or not you consider that justified, that's a decision you've got to make on your own. So there you go. Last I will say about that. Scores for this. I'm having a wee bit of trouble with mine. Is there anything coalescing for you?
Yeah, this one earns a firm 88 from me. It is very good, very curious, very different. It has a lot of clear, kind of evocative characteristics. It says a lot for itself, and I like that whole baklava and Turkish delight thing.
Well, I'll go a wee bit lower with 84. I think, did it not have quite that fiery element that slightly confused some of these more subtle, esoteric flavours, which I think are very good? Then I think I'd like it a lot more. It just seems to be, for me, grappling with this oddly youthful character, interfering with these sort of deeper, woodier, more mature notes that it brings along. But anyway, we're only going up from here. Next is the Caribbean cask, which is 14 years old, and we will dig straight into that one and see how it speaks to us. Slanja, we will be right back with the other one.